Lao Tzu said, "All things take their rise, but he does not turn away from them. He gives them life, but does not take possession of them. He goes through these processes, but does not take possession of them. He acts, but does not appropriate. It is because he lays no claim to credit that the credit cannot be taken away from him." Let's delve deeper into this. Everything happens on its own, yet the wise do not turn away from it. They nurture life but do not possess it. They move through all experiences without claiming ownership. They fulfill their duties but do not seek credit. And because they do not claim credit, it cannot be taken from them. Thus, the wise arrange their actions effortlessly and communicate their principles in silence. Lao Tzu says, "Everything happens on its own." One of the fundamental principles of Tao is this: nothing requires our intervention to happen. Sleep comes, hunger arises, birth and death occur, all without our doing. Yet people believe they are the ones making things happen. According to Lao Tzu, the greatest delusion of humankind is assuming ownership over what naturally unfolds. This assumption is the root of ignorance. He does not tell you to give up dishonesty or theft. Instead, he says that neither can you do anything, nor can you abandon anything. The very idea of renunciation assumes action, but if one realizes they are not the doer, what is left to renounce? There is an old Chinese joke from Lao Tzu's time. A young man and his beloved stand by the seashore on a moonlit night. Waves rise and crash against the shore. The man looks up at the sky and commands the ocean, "Rise, waves, rise with all your might." His beloved, amazed, exclaims, "I never knew you had such power. You asked the waves to rise, and they did." This joke has lived on since Lao Tzu's time because life itself is just like this. The waves rise on their own, but we stand at the shore and claim we made them rise. Lao Tzu says you cannot be the doer, nor can you be the renouncer. Things happen by their nature, and they do not need you for them to unfold. A wise person, then, does not turn away from what happens naturally. Hunger arises. An ignorant person overeats, believing they are in control. There is a story about Donald. He was on a journey with a disciple who, after eating, would shake his body and then eat again. Donald watched this for months. Finally, he asked, "What are you doing?" The disciple replied, "You may not know, but by shaking myself, I make space for more food." Upon hearing this, Donald slapped him hard and said, "You scoundrel! Had I known this trick before, I could have eaten much more." Ignorance takes two forms. One believes they are eating, while another believes they are fasting. Lao Tzu calls both ignorant because both assume they are the doer. The wise neither indulge nor force deprivation. They do not interfere with hunger, but simply witness it. If hunger comes, they eat. If it does not, they don't. They do not manipulate it. A monk named Ta Kuan was once asked about his spiritual practice. He replied, "I have no special practice. My master only taught me this. When I feel sleepy, I sleep. When I am hungry, I eat. When I wake, I rise. When there is something to say, I speak. When silence is needed, I remain silent." The visitor scoffed, "Is this even a practice?" Ta Kuan replied, "I don't know if it's a practice. My master told me that believing you can cultivate something is itself ignorance. I have stopped cultivating and simply watch what happens. Since then, I have found supreme bliss. Suffering no longer touches me because I accept everything. Even pain does not trouble me, for I do not resist it. Pain only hurts when we resist it. The sting of suffering is not in pain itself, but in our rejection of it, our belief that it should not be happening. If one truly sees that what happens is the only thing that could have happened, suffering disappears. The loss of joy is not painful. What is painful is our belief that we could have prevented that loss." Ta Kuan said, "I do not know what practice is, but since I started living this way, I have never known suffering." Lao Tzu does not tell you to give up stealing or dishonesty. He simply says that neither can you do anything, nor can you give anything up. Renunciation only makes sense if you are the doer. But if you are not doing anything in the first place, what is there to renounce? This understanding is crucial because all philosophies of renunciation stand in opposition to Lao Tzu's principle. The renunciant believes, "I can give up," but Lao Tzu says, "You can neither act nor give up acting." The only freedom you have is to either claim the role of the doer or to let go of that illusion. To grasp this, Mahavira's teaching offers insight. Mahavira's concept of dharma does not mean religion. For Mahavira, dharma means the natural way of things. He says, the nature of things is their dharma. Fire burns, that is its nature. Water flows downward, that is its nature. A child grows into an adult, that is nature. Happiness comes and goes, that is nature. Nothing in the world remains still, that is nature. We suffer because we resist nature. Aging happens and we fight it. Sickness happens and we resist it. But everything is natural. Lao Tzu says everything happens on its own, and the wise do not turn away from it. They do not even try to be free. They do not struggle, because all struggle leads to bondage. The wise do not wish for things to be a certain way, because wishing leads to suffering. The world does not bend to anyone's wishes. It follows its own laws. Sometimes events align with our desires, and we think we are in control, like a man standing at the shore commanding the waves. But when things do not align with our desires, we suffer. A merchant kept losing money for years. His friends realized that whatever he did, if they did the opposite, they would profit. The entire market started observing him. Whatever he did, they avoided. One day, something strange happened. He made a move, and his friends, as always, did the opposite. But this time, they lost everything, and he became wealthy. Shocked, they asked, "What happened?" The merchant laughed. "For years, I have always been wrong. Today, I realized my mistake. I always act against the natural flow. So this time, I did the opposite of what my instincts told me." Lao Tzu says, "It is neither winning nor losing that matters. When one aligns with the natural order, things fall into place. When one resists, things fall apart." The wise person stands firmly in life, exactly as it is. They do not run away because they do not believe escape is possible. But if escape happens, they do not resist that either. Do not misunderstand this. If escape happens, they do not stop it. They flow with whatever arises. They do not struggle in the river. They surrender to the current and say, "Take me wherever you will. That is my destination." A life lived in this way is extraordinary. And that is the essence of Lao Tzu's wisdom. The wise give life to everything they touch, but they do not claim ownership. They offer everything they have to give, yet they do not establish authority over anything. Lao Tzu says that the moment you claim ownership over something, you incite rebellion. The moment you assert possession, you create an enemy. The moment you take away someone's freedom, you push them towards reckless defiance. A wise person does not claim ownership. They give freely, without expecting anything in return. If they offer love, they do not demand love in return. If love returns, they accept it. If it does not, they remain undisturbed. There is no difference for them. Whether love is reciprocated or not, it does not change their state. They establish no authority. All forms of ownership demand repayment. What does ownership even mean? It means that because I have done something, I am entitled to something in return. If I do not receive it, I will suffer. The irony is that even when we receive what we think we are entitled to, it does not bring happiness. But when we do not receive it, it brings suffering. If I believe that I have given someone love, then I expect their help when I am in trouble. If they do help, I do not feel gratitude because I take it for granted. I believe it is supposed to happen. There is no question of happiness because what is expected has merely taken place. But if they do not help, it brings deep sorrow. Imagine walking down a path and dropping a handkerchief. If your wife picks it up and hands it back, you feel nothing. But if a stranger does it, you feel a sense of joy and gratitude. If your mother stays up all night pressing your head to ease your pain, you take it as normal. But if someone else does it for just a moment, you may remember it for a lifetime. Where there is ownership, expectations arise. If those expectations are met, there is no joy. But if they are not met, there is great sorrow. Ownership brings only suffering. It never brings happiness. Happiness is assumed, so when it happens, it is not even noticed. But when it does not happen, suffering takes its place. Lao Tzu says that the wise give life but do not claim ownership. A truly wise person understands the secret of happiness. Their state is the opposite of ours. Because they do not claim ownership, they find joy in even the smallest gestures of kindness. If someone offers them food, they feel incredibly fortunate and deeply grateful. It was never expected, so it feels like a blessing. If no one offers them food, they are not distressed because there was never an expectation in the first place. Suffering follows expectation. Suffering follows ownership. Where there is a sense of possession, only suffering and misery exist. Hell is built upon ownership, no matter what form it takes, whether it is a husband's claim over his wife, a wife's claim over her husband, a friend's claim over a friend, a father's claim over his son, or a teacher's claim over their disciple. Wherever ownership exists, hell grows in its shadow, and wherever ownership dissolves, heaven is born in that open sky. So wherever you see suffering, recognize that ownership is present. Without ownership, suffering cannot exist. Wherever there is pain, understand that it is caused by possession and attachment. Yet we never realize that suffering comes from our own sense of ownership. Instead, we always blame others for our suffering. And because of this, we fail to understand the opposite truth, that our freedom from ownership is what brings us happiness. Wherever there is happiness, there is an absence of ownership. Wherever there is suffering, there is a claim of possession. True wisdom is knowing this. If wisdom cannot even lift a person beyond their own suffering, then what value does it hold? They give life. They give not only love, but everything they can, without ever asking for anything in return. They go through all of life's processes, yet they do not claim ownership over them. They pass through every stage of life, childhood as a child, youth as a young person, old age as an elder. But they do not become possessive of their youth. One who claims ownership over their youth will weep, regret, and struggle when old age arrives. The wise one passes through youth but never clings to it, so when old age comes, they welcome it. They live life but do not claim it as their possession, so when death arrives, it finds them with open arms. Because they never claimed ownership over life, death has nothing to take away from them. Something can only be taken from you if you believe you own it. You can only be robbed if you think something belongs to you. You can only be deceived if you feel a sense of possession. But a wise person cannot be deceived. Nothing can be stolen from them. Nothing can be taken away. Because the root of all attachment never takes hold in them. They never become owners. Ownership is the foundation of our suffering, yet we fail to realize it. We quietly establish possession over things without even noticing. Not only do we claim ownership where it is convenient, but we also create the illusion of possession where none exists. Given the slightest opportunity, we start believing we own something. Often, we lay claim to things in the most unexpected places. Our entire lives are filled with such possessiveness. If I welcome you warmly for even a moment, whether you realize it or not, you may start feeling ownership over me. People write to me, and as a courtesy, I respond to their first letter. Soon, they expect an immediate reply to every letter. When I delay or stop responding, their next letter is filled with anger. What happened? They claimed ownership over my responses. Writing a letter was their right, but they assumed my reply was an obligation. The mind works in subtle ways, setting up possessiveness even in the smallest things. And with that possessiveness comes suffering. They pass through all processes of life. Life is nothing but a continuous unfolding of processes: love, hatred, wealth, friendship. Every moment, something is happening. Breathing, sleeping, eating, arriving, leaving. Life is an endless web of processes. But the wise do not become masters of these processes. That is why nothing can ever shake them. No one can pull them down from any throne because they have never claimed a throne to begin with. They fulfill their duties but do not take credit. They do what needs to be done, but they never demand acknowledgement. They never say, "Recognize that I did this, accept that I was the one who made it happen." Donald was bathing in a river when he ventured too far and started drowning. A man saved him. But after that, whenever the man saw Donald, on the street, in the market, even in the church, he would remind him, "Remember, I was the one who saved you." It became unbearable. One day, Donald grabbed his hand and rushed toward the river. The man asked, "Where are we going?" Donald said, "Come with me, quickly." Standing in the deep water where he was once rescued, Donald said, "Now go away. Don't save me again. It was too costly the first time." We do even the smallest good deeds, and then announce them to the world. The very need to proclaim them shows that we did not truly enjoy the act itself. It was a transaction, a bargain. We did not act out of pure joy, but out of a hidden expectation. Lao Tzu's final teaching is this: because they do not claim credit, they cannot be denied it. Only those who make claims can be deprived. Only a claim can be refuted. But how can one refute a claim that was never made? How can one tell someone, you did not do this, if they never declared that they had done it? If there was no announcement, there can be no denial. So Lao Tzu says, those who do not claim credit can never be deprived of it. Only those who demand recognition can be denied. And the irony is that those who demand recognition are the ones who are already deprived, who have never truly received anything. The desire to claim credit arises because they did not experience fulfillment in the act itself. So now, they seek fulfillment in recognition. This desire also arises when a duty has not been fully performed. Because a complete action is so total, so fulfilling, that the question of claiming credit does not even arise. But when one has not done something fully, a sense of guilt lingers within them, a subtle regret, a shadow of incompleteness. And to suppress this unease, they announce, I did this. A mother who has not truly cared for her son will declare everything she has done for him. But a mother who has given everything to her child will always feel that she could have done more. She will always regret what was left undone. And when a mother remembers all that she could not do, she proves that she is a true mother. But when a mother proclaims everything she has done, she reveals that she has not truly been a mother. In life, the need to claim something arises only from guilt. Modern psychology now supports this truth. Particularly Alfred Adler, one of the three great psychologists of this era, deeply resonates with Lao Tzu's insight. Adler says that a person makes claims because deep down, they feel they are not truly deserving. One who suffers from an inferiority complex becomes overly ambitious. One who is deeply afraid covers themselves in an illusion of bravery. One who is weak within constantly proclaims their strength. One who lacks knowledge on the inside builds an external facade of wisdom. Adler says that people declare the exact opposite of what they truly are, because their reality is painful. And through their false declarations, they try to erase, suppress, and escape from their inner truth. This holds deep truth. Those who suffer from an inferiority complex desperately try to prove themselves to the world. Until the world acknowledges them as something significant, they cannot escape their own feelings of inadequacy. The day others accept them as important, they finally feel some relief. But the inner void remains. It cannot be erased so easily. Still, they live in self-deception, creating an illusion for themselves. Lao Tzu's wisdom, they do not claim credit, reveals a profound reality. Those who are truly deserving never feel the need to claim anything. Understand this. Those who are truly deserving never claim anything. Their authenticity is so undeniable that it does not require proof. Their merit is so fundamental that even the divine could not deny it. So why would they need the approval of people? Jesus was crucified. His disciples believed that the crucifixion would not be able to kill him. They expected a miracle, a divine intervention. They thought this was the perfect moment. If Jesus did not prove himself now, then when? Even his enemies shared this expectation. They taunted him, saying, "If you are truly the Son of God, then let this cross prove it. If God cannot save his own Son, then what can he do for others? If an ordinary man can crucify the Son of God, then all claims are meaningless." Both friends and foes were waiting for the decisive moment. Would Jesus perform a miracle? Would he descend from the cross unharmed? But Jesus remained silent. He died like an ordinary man. His disciples watched, waiting for the miracle. His enemies waited, expecting something supernatural. But nothing happened. He died as simply as any common man would. For his enemies, there was no disappointment. They had always believed he was a fraud. "We told you," they said, "he was just a carpenter's son, not the Son of God." But for his disciples, it was a devastating shock. Their expectations had shattered. Their illusion had collapsed. For 2,000 years, those who love Jesus have tried to understand this moment. Why didn't he prove himself? If they could understand Lao Tzu, they would understand Jesus. Otherwise, they never will. Jesus was so truly the Son of God that he did not need to prove it. If he had performed a miracle, it would have meant that he was desperate for validation. His silent acceptance of death was the greatest proof that he was not ordinary. Even ordinary men struggle and resist death. But he did nothing. He didn't even try. The cross was heavy, too heavy for those carrying it. So Jesus told them, "Place it on my shoulders, I am still young." The laborers carrying the cross were old and weak, so Jesus carried it himself up the hill. He climbed the hill, bore the cross, and died quietly. His connection with the divine must have been so profound that proving it was unnecessary. If he had tried to prove it, it would have shown that he was insecure about his truth. But those who truly belong do not need to claim anything. Christianity has never fully understood this, because Christianity was never influenced by Lao Tzu's wisdom. And the truth is, one cannot understand Jesus without understanding Lao Tzu. Judaism had no philosophical framework to comprehend Jesus. No one before him in his land had ever spoken like him. He was a foreign element, an outsider in his own culture. Jesus' true teachings did not originate in his land. His wisdom came from the East, from India, China, and Egypt. His learning took place in these lands. The very essence of the Eastern spiritual traditions flowed through him. And that is why those who truly understand say, the greatest miracle Jesus ever performed was refusing to perform a miracle. Even an ordinary man in such a moment of crisis would have tried to do something. Jesus did nothing. The truth was so absolute, so self-evident that it required no proof. Why prove it to men when it was already clear to God? Only those who are uncertain in the eyes of God seek validation from people. Since they do not claim credit, they cannot be deprived of it. Jesus did not claim, and because he did not claim, he could never be denied. He became the Son of God, not in the miracles he performed, but in the one miracle he did not perform. The human mind is eager to prove itself. That mountain was filled with anticipation. 100,000 people gathered, waiting for a sign. His disciples hoped for a miracle. His enemies expected one. Everyone held their breath, waiting, but they all left empty-handed. Jesus simply died. And yet, this was the same man who had touched the dead, and they had risen. The same man who had healed the sick with a mere touch. The same man who had sat beneath a barren tree, and leaves had sprouted. The same man who had calmed the raging sea with a gesture. And yet, in his final moment, he did nothing. Even his enemies were astonished. Even if he was not the Son of God, he knew something. He had a secret. They had seen him heal the sick, raise the dead. Even they did not expect nothing to happen. They thought, at the very least, the cross would break, the nails would bend, the wounds would not bleed. But nothing happened. Not even a minor miracle. Even an ordinary yogi with deep control over his breath can stop his wounds from bleeding. But Jesus did not. The entire mountain was waiting. The moment was charged. The climax was perfect, but nothing happened. And that nothing was the greatest miracle of all. Only if one understands Lao Tzu can one truly understand Jesus. Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Lao Tzu alone can reveal the true meaning of these words. Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Who are the meek? Those who make no claims. Those who do not demand recognition. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who have nothing, for they will possess everything." These words have no place in Jewish tradition. In Judaism, justice was strict, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But then came Jesus, an anomaly, saying, "If someone strikes you on one cheek, offer the other. If someone takes your coat, give him your shirt as well. If someone asks you to walk 2 miles, walk 3. This was the voice of Lao Tzu. Claim nothing, and nothing can be taken from you. Seek no credit, and you will never be denied it. The moment you claim something, opposition arises. The moment you demand respect, you invite insult. The moment you seek power, you are destined to fall. Lao Tzu says, "Sit where there is no lower place to fall. Then no one can bring you down." That is the true throne. Lao Tzu says that the true ruler is the one who cannot be removed, who truly holds the throne, the one who sits in the lowest place, for then no one can pull them down. When you reach the place where there is no lower place to go, you become unshakable. That is the true throne. Lao Tzu never claimed to be wise. If someone approached him and said, "I have heard you are a wise man," he would reply, "You must have heard wrong. Trust me, those who told you this know less about me than I know about myself. I am a great fool." Those who did not understand would leave, thinking they had wasted their time. But those who truly understood would fall at his feet, for only the truly wise can acknowledge their ignorance. The ignorant always claim to know. Only the wise can say, "I know nothing. Look elsewhere." There is a sect of St. Francis known for humility. St. Francis himself was an embodiment of humility, but his followers found it difficult to match his level. At a gathering of various Christian sects, a Franciscan monk stood up and said, "We are not as traditional as the Catholics. We are not as scholarly as the Trappists. We are not as proficient in prayer as the Quakers. But in humility, we are at the top." And with that, everything was lost. At the top in humility. What is humility if not the absence of superiority? True humility is the feeling of being at the very back, of not being above anyone. Jesus said, "Blessed are the last, for they shall be the first in the kingdom of heaven." But this entire stream of thought, this philosophy, is deeply Lao Tzuian. Never claim credit. Yet, even in humility, the ego can claim supremacy, as it did with the Franciscan monk. Even saying, "we do not claim credit," becomes a claim. The mind plays the subtlest of games. It can even say, "Since the wise say they are ignorant, I too will say I am ignorant." But in doing so, it loses the essence entirely. Lao Tzu's vision is to break this complex cycle of the mind. What is this cycle? It is the paradox that when we strive for something, we miss it. It is like trying to fall asleep. If you try too hard, sleep will evade you. But if you let go, it comes naturally. Lao Tzu says, "Claim credit and you will lose it. Do not claim it, and it is already yours. Seek to possess, and you will become a slave. Otherwise, who can take what is already yours? If you beg, you will suffer, for nothing in this world is gained by begging. But if you do not ask, everything is already given." These principles may seem upside down, but they are not. It is we who are upside down, so they appear reversed to us. We believe that to attain fame, one must strive for it. To gain happiness, one must chase after it. And when Lao Tzu says, "Do not strive for happiness and it will come," it sounds absurd. We struggle to attain happiness and fail. How could we possibly achieve it by doing nothing? But our logic misleads us. It tells us, if we cannot attain it even after trying so hard, how can we attain it without effort? Lao Tzu responds, "Precisely because you are trying so hard, you are not attaining it. Try once without effort." We have been striving for lifetimes, and nothing has come of it. Yet the mind insists just a little more effort is needed. The mind never tires of this logic. It always suggests that just a little more effort is required. But Lao Tzu says, it is your very effort that is holding you back. Let go. Why does he say this? Because whatever is truly worth attaining is already within us. We are so busy searching outside that we fail to see it. Often when something is right in front of us, our frantic search causes us to miss it. Have you ever tried to recall a name that you know is on the tip of your tongue, but the more you struggle, the more it eludes you? And then, when you stop thinking about it, the name suddenly appears. The greatest scientific discoveries of this century share this pattern. Scientists often struggled to find answers, but the moment they stopped searching consciously, the answers emerged from within. Many Nobel Prize-winning scientists have testified that their discoveries did not come through effort, but in moments of effortless realization. Marie Curie, exhausted after a long day of calculations, once fell asleep. In her sleep, the correct answer came to her, and she woke up and wrote it down. The next morning, she checked and found it was correct. The answer had arrived without the usual process, whereas working on it consciously had taken her days. Where do such answers come from? Those who understand the depths of human consciousness say that everything worth knowing is already known to us. We just don't realize it. Everything that will ever be discovered is already within us. A tree's future leaves are hidden within its seed, just as everything humanity will ever know is already present within human consciousness. But because we search outward, we remain unaware of what we already possess. Lao Tzu says that the true ruler is the one who cannot be removed from the throne. And who is truly on the throne? It is the one who sits in the lowest place, the one who has nothing beneath them. No one can displace them because there is no lower place to push them down to. Such a person, paradoxically, is the real king. Lao Tzu never claimed to be wise. If someone came to him and said, "I have heard you are wise," he would reply, "You must have heard wrong. Believe me, others may not know as much about me as I know about myself, and I know that I am deeply ignorant." Those who didn't understand would walk away, thinking they had wasted their time. But those who truly knew wisdom would hold on to him, recognizing that only a truly wise person can accept their ignorance. Only the ignorant claim to have knowledge. The truly wise are the ones who can say, "I know nothing. You should search elsewhere. You have been misinformed." The mind argues, if we haven't attained something despite all our efforts, how can we attain it by not trying? But Lao Tzu answers, it is precisely because you are trying that you are not attaining it. Stop trying and see what happens. People have been striving for fulfillment for lifetimes, yet it remains out of reach. The mind convinces us that just a little more effort is needed, just a little more struggle. But the truth is, the very effort itself is the obstacle. Lao Tzu says, drop the struggle. Why? Because everything that is truly valuable in life is already within us. But we are so busy searching outside that we fail to see it. Often, when we desperately try to remember something, the harder we try, the more it slips away. But when we relax, it comes effortlessly. The same principle applies to great scientific discoveries. Many of them happen not through intense effort, but in moments of relaxation. Newton was simply sitting under a tree when an apple fell, and the realization of gravity dawned upon him. It was a moment of rest, not effort. Modern education is beginning to understand this. In places like Scandinavia and Switzerland, new methods are being tested where children are not forced to sit rigidly and strain to learn. Instead, they are allowed to relax. They sit however they feel comfortable. Some even lie down. Teachers instruct them to close their eyes and just listen, not to force themselves to understand, but simply to absorb. Surprisingly, what used to take 2 years to learn can now be mastered in just 3 months with this approach. Russia has also experimented with hypnopedia, or sleep learning. A sleeping child has a small device playing lessons in their ear. After 2 hours, they wake up, write down what they remember, and go back to sleep. The results are astonishing. What would normally take months to learn can be mastered in just a week. This happens because there is no mental effort, no strain. The knowledge seeps directly into the subconscious. All of this is in line with Lao Tzu's teachings. He says, if you try to learn, you will struggle. Do not try, simply be receptive, and learning will happen. The more effort we exert, the more blocked we become. The moment we relax and become open, knowledge flows naturally. We believe we are the doers, but this is an illusion. Things happen, life unfolds, wisdom arises, not through force, but through allowing. The wise do not seek ownership, yet everything belongs to them. They do not seek credit, yet all credit is theirs. Lao Tzu's path is not about achieving, it is about surrendering to the flow of existence. And so the wisdom of Lao Tzu whispers through time, reminding us that life is not a battlefield to conquer, but a river to flow with. The more we grasp, the more we lose. The more we chase, the further our destination drifts. But when we let go, when we simply allow, life unfolds in its own perfect rhythm. Perhaps the greatest discoveries, the deepest truths, and the most profound peace are not found through struggle, but in stillness. Not in force, but in surrender. Not in seeking, but in simply being. So as you step away from this moment, let go of the weight of striving. Sit beneath your own tree, listen to the whispers of the wind, and just be. Because in that stillness, in that effortless presence, you may find what you were never looking for, yet always needed. Until next time, stay open, stay present, and let life flow through you.